Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this forum for Board of Education candidates at Washington County Public Schools Center for Education Services. My name is Mark Keller. I'm an editor and anchor with Herald Mail Media and HMTV6. This event is sponsored by HM Media and Antietam Cable. While the school system has generously offered its use of its facilities for this event, the use of the facilities does not constitute an endorsement by the school system. Tonight we welcome 3 of 6 candidates vying for 3 seats on the Washington County Board of Education. Let's meet the candidates who are seated in alphabetical order. They are Jacqueline Fisher, Ryan Miner, and Peter Perini. All candidates were given 2 months' notice for this open public forum, but the other 3 candidates declined to participate. They are Mike Gesford, Karen Harshman, and Stan Stauffer. Before we start, I'd like to go over some rules for the audience. We ask you that you please silence your cell phones. And most important, we want to ask your questions of the candidates. When you entered the auditorium, a volunteer from Herald Mail Media was handing out note cards and pencils for this purpose. Please write your question on a card and raise the card in the air when you're prepared to submit your question. Volunteers from Herald Mail Media will review the questions to avoid redundancies or personal attacks and try to cover a broad range of topics. Please note the questions cannot be directed to a specific candidate and will be randomly selected to be posed to the whole group. Candidates, please keep your eyes on our volunteer timekeeper, Kelly Marino, in the front row. Kelly has 3 folders to signal time. Green means your allotted time has begun. Yellow means you have 15 seconds left. And red signals that your time is up. Please finish your thoughts succinctly. If you go on too long, though, I will be interrupting you politely, of course. And if you would, please remain seated throughout. And now we get on to the main event. First, candidates will make their opening remarks. They will have 2 minutes each. There will be at least 14 rounds of questions. In each round, all candidates will have 1 minute to respond to the same question. We'll then move on to the closing statements. So candidates, please give your opening statements, beginning with Ms. Jacqueline Fisher.
Thank you. There has been much said in the newspaper and on social media about some of the other board candidates. Since personal integrity in a board member is so important, I thought I would share a little information about myself. I'm a product of Washington County Schools. I earned my bachelor's degree at Frostburg State College and my master's equivalency primarily from Western Maryland College. My husband and I have been married for 45 years and we have 1 son. We were financially responsible individuals who own our own home free and clear and have a credit rating in the 800s. We pay our credit cards off monthly and have never had a failed business venture. I taught English and journalism at Williamsport, Smithsburg, and Clear Spring High Schools for nearly 32 years. And during that time, I was nominated twice for Washington County Teacher of the Year by 2 different principals, and once for Maryland's English Teacher of the Year by my supervisor. My only brushes with the law have come in the form of 1 speeding ticket and 1 parking ticket, which I received while I was attending a county commissioners meeting for the school board. Some of my accomplishments while serving on the board from 2002 and 2006, and then from 2010 to the present, include personally editing the first 2 WCPS master plans, serving as board liaison to the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts during its creation, working with the board that hired Dr. Clayton Wilcox, and currently I am leading the board's policy committee in a review of the policy manual, resulting in less bureaucracy, greater efficiency, and a more transparent school system.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. We move on to Mr. Ryan Miner.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Herald Mail. Thank you to the candidates joining me this evening, and especially thank you to the audience for being here. My name is Ryan Miner, and I am a candidate for the Washington County Board of Education. I was born and raised in Washington County. I went to Williamsport High School. I graduated in 2003. I've been a substitute teacher. I've been a campaign consultant, and I've worked for a technology firm. Currently, I work for my stepfather's company at Cumberland Valley Heating and Air Conditioning. I sit on the Brook Lane Foundation Board. I'm a Hagerstown Rotarian, and I'm a volunteer at the fire department of Halfway. I'm a problem solver. I like to find solutions, And when I tell you I'm going to do something, my deed invariably follows my word. I'm pragmatic, I'm open-minded, and I'm a listener. I believe that I can offer independent thought, and I believe that my youth and enthusiasm is a little bit of a breath of fresh air for this Washington County Board. My experience in business, budgets, education, and in my involvement in our community, I believe will add value to this current board. Board members must be able to work together as a team and accomplish everything on behalf of our students. Folks, that's what it boils down to, working on behalf of the students, meeting every single need of our students, and ensuring that each student is afforded a fair and equitable opportunity at a great shot in Washington County Public Schools. If I'm elected, I can guarantee you that I'm going to work as a team to accomplish great things in the next 4 years. I look forward to working with our superintendent, and I look forward to inspiring curiosity, creativity, and achievement. I look forward to being a great board member, and I hope that you take a chance and a leap of faith on my candidacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. We move on to Mr. Perini.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Perini, and I am a candidate for the Washington County Board of Education. My wife Cynthia and I have raised 3 children, all of whom attended 12 years at Washington County Public Schools. They are finding success in life thanks to their many dedicated teachers, coaches, and support personnel. I'm running for the Board of Education to help make Washington County Public Schools the best that it can be for the students who are in school now and for the next generation. My top 3 priorities are fiscal discipline and responsibility, supporting the teachers and educational support personnel, and working with the other board members as a team. I'm a successful businessman. I volunteer with many nonprofits in the county. I have served on the boards of many nonprofits. I am the past chairman of the United Way campaign of Washington County. I'm the past president of the Rotary Club of Hagerstown. Our family attends St. Anne Church. My credentials go on, but it's not what I can say about myself that matters, but what others say. For example, retiring board member Paul Bailey has said, as written in the Herald Mail newspaper, quote, "It is abundantly clear to me that Peter Perini has excellent qualifications to be elected to serve on the Board of Education. As I leave my seat on the board, I strongly support the candidacy of Peter Perini and encourage your support. Peter will work to provide what is required to keep the board strong," end quote. I am honored to be the only businessman running for the Board of Education to be teacher recommended. I have also been endorsed by the educational support personnel. I look forward to speaking with you this evening, to answering your questions, because answering voters' questions is so very important, and I look forward to winning your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perini. We'll go into our first question of the night, and we'll start this round with Ms. Fisher. Do you support universal pre-K in Washington County? And if so, what type of funding model would you support?
Excuse me, I absolutely support universal pre-K. We can't do it overnight. It's something that's going to have to be phased in because it is expensive. Literacy, though, for the primary grades is so crucial. Children start out school learning to read, but by 3rd grade, they are reading to learn. And if they haven't learned to read properly, they're not going to learn properly. They're going to get further and further behind. The state of Maryland has started working on this project by offering grants to schools. Washington County has one of those grants for pre-K. We're anxious to find out just what the state's plan is going to be, how much they're going to be willing to fund it. I do believe it's absolutely coming, that the state will, in the very near future, make it a requirement for all counties to have universal pre-K. I'm just hoping, I guess, that the state picks up the tab.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, same question to you.
You know, I support universal pre-K in theory, but my biggest question is, how the heck are we going to pay for it? We have to look at what the state's plan will be. We have two candidates running for governor currently, and one candidate has laid out a plan, and one other candidate says that if he's elected governor, that we should continue to invest in education. I'm concerned because this is going to cost multi-millions of dollars. The state has given Washington County a grant, but I'm concerned, will this take away jobs from our daycare providers? What about our private enterprise? And is it developmentally appropriate for our students to be educated at 3 years old within the public schools? I'm concerned about the rising infrastructure cost, and I'm concerned how this county is going to be able to afford it. In theory, it's a great idea, but until I see a funding formula that works, that isn't going to raise your taxpayer dollars, then I can support it. But until then, I'm skeptical.
Thank you. Mr. Perini.
I am absolutely in favor of universal pre-K. As I mentioned in my opening statement, our three children each spent 12 years in Washington County Public Schools, but prior to that, they each spent several years in pre-kindergarten at Surrey School. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that, and they have a great program there. And I'd love to see that program reproduced throughout the Washington County public school system, because I think our children were well educated prior to getting to first grade. They were reading, they were doing math, and I think it really helped them as they were going forward. And I would absolutely encourage Washington County Public Schools to investigate universal pre-K.
Thank you. Going to round two, we'll start this round with Mr. Minor. What best practices have you examined or researched from other school systems in the state or region that could be implemented in Washington County?
Well, that's a great question. I think that many school systems, I look at Frederick County's model and how they are attempting to implement Common Core. They are implementing it the best way they can, in the same way that I think that we can. It's here. Although I disagree with it fundamentally in how it was implemented, we have to do our very best to give our students the resources they need and give our teachers the resources they need. I look at Montgomery County. I think that they adequately meet their students' needs by the way that they counsel students towards jobs and careers. And I certainly like the way that the Board of Education and up in Western Maryland, the real Western Maryland, up in Garrett County and Allegheny County, that they focus on vocational trades.
Mr. Perini?
Interestingly enough, the research that I've done has also been in the implementation of the Common Core program and the development of the curriculum. I have a concern with making sure that we get it right. It's not a question of whether there's going to be Common Core or not. That's not a local question. But we do have the ability to work on the curriculum and the implementation. And I think it's very important to make sure that not only do we have a great curriculum for the students, but that the teachers have the opportunity to adapt to this new type of teaching, this new style, and then when they're evaluated on that there's been enough time to allow for the teachers to adapt. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Rather than look at what other counties or other states are doing with the Common Core, I've been more interested in what other counties and states are doing along the lines of STEM education and along the lines of working with the junior colleges and colleges, as we've been doing here for a number of years, with our students able to earn credits both for high school graduation as well as for college locally at HCC. There are other counties doing similar and other states doing similar things. Many states, however, have gone far beyond where we have gone so far. It's been particularly interesting for me because, as many of you probably know, we were looking at building another high school here in the county. And finding other ways to sort of siphon off students from various schools into other programs has allowed us to put that very expensive project off for a long time. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. We have many students taking advantage of this, and my time is up.
Great. Thank you, candidates. We'll be right back after a short break. We'll start this round with Mr. Perini, and this goes sort of hand in hand with the last question, given your answers. What concerns you the most about the Common Core state standards, and what would you do to remedy that?
Well, I just think I just answered that question, but I'll say it again in a different way. Of course, the Common Core is not a state standard. The Common Core was developed nationally by a group of state superintendents funded by the Gates Foundation, and it is a program that then was funded through Race to the Top through the U.S. Department of Education. Maryland applied for and received the grant through that program, and that grant money has filtered down through to Washington County. So my concern is that as I mentioned a few moments ago, my concern is the speed with which all of that has happened. I don't necessarily think that the Common Core standards are bad in any way. If you look at the standards, they make a lot of sense. I'm concerned about the implementation. I'm concerned to make sure that when we're testing the students, that they've had the opportunity to learn the material. I'm concerned that when we're evaluating the teachers on the outcomes of those students, that they've had the opportunity to develop the programs based on the curriculum. So my concern is all centered around implementation, doing it, getting it right, and spending the right amount of time to make sure that it's done correctly. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Fisher?
I have no problems with the Common Core standards themselves. In fact, I think it's time this nation had standards. We have standards for everything. If we didn't have standards, it would be difficult to judge anything. I think what many people have problems understanding is that we've had guidelines before. This time they are universal. For instance, one standard might say something like, by the middle of first grade, all students will be able to multiply with single digits. Or by the end of kindergarten, all children will count to 100 by ones and tens. It's simply the skills and the learning that students must achieve by different grade levels. However, I do agree with Mr. Perini. The problem is coming in the speed with which we've been asking our teachers to accomplish the lessons and curriculum and change their teaching.
Mr. Minor?
Common Core is, like Mr. Perini said, it was developed at the national level. One of my main bullet points in my entire campaign is local control. Our decisions, our education decisions, are best administered right here in Washington County, right here. And with Common Core, you're passing down a whole new level of high-stakes testing. And if you dissect the standards, and I have fundamental disagreements with some of the standards. I do agree with Mrs. Fisher that we do need standards, but we need the right standards. We need developmentally appropriate standards. And my concerns are that our teachers are implementing these materials, and they have had no time to actually dissect the materials and teach it. But we must be pragmatic. We cannot reject the $100 million that our state has taken, and we have to work with what's best in Washington County. We have to make it work, because if not, $100 million is a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to round 4, and we will begin this round with Ms. Fisher. Unlike most counties around the state, the Board of Education and the Board of County Commissioners in Washington County have had a good working relationship for the last decade. Do you agree that that relationship has been productive? What factors have made it cooperative, and what would you do to keep it cooperative?
Oh, my. Yes, we have had a very cooperative relationship. In fact, I keep hearing that Annapolis talks about how Washington County's commissioners and Board of Education get along so well when so many other counties do not have that privilege. I'm not sure why we have acquired this level of cooperation. Some of it, I think, is just personalities. But basically, I think for any group to work together collegiately, you have to have trust and respect in one another, and I do believe we share that. Otherwise, you know, I don't know how to explain it. It just, we work well together. We, like I said, we just trust and respect one another.
Mr. Minor, same question.
I think you can sum up the relationship in one word, and we're very blessed because, I think you would sum up that relationship as harmony. We work well together. Our Board of Education, our state delegation, and our county commissioners, they have developed an extraordinarily working partnership. And I think that they keep in mind that we're all working towards our students. We all boil it down, what is best for our students? And, you know, I can say that in Annapolis, our board some of our board members has established fantastic relationships all around the state. And with our commissioners, when we go, or when the board goes before the commissioners and they have a discussion about education, I think invariably they talk about how can we best meet the needs. And again, it's harmony. And I'm very proud of the relationship. And I think this is one of the counties that can be modeled after for having a solid working relationship between the government agencies. Thank you.
Mr. Perini?
It's all about relationships. And we are blessed in Washington County that under the leadership of, for the last 2 years, of Board President Dr. Justin Hardings, the current board, or most of the current board, has developed excellent relationships with those sitting commissioners. I think there's a lot to be said about the transparency that occurs between both boards. And quite frankly, I think if you go back and look at the discussions, they do what they say they're going to do. So when the Board of Education says they're going to provide a certain level budgeting requests, that's what comes in. When the Board of County Commissioners makes an agreement with that, that's what they do. As far as keeping those relationships, I personally know all of the gentlemen who are running for county commissioner. I'm not going to speculate on which 5 are going to be the county commissioners, but whoever those 5 are, I already have good relationships with them, good personal knowledge, and I expect to be able to hit the ground running and maintain that high level of communication, trust, and transparency that currently exists between the Board of Education and the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. Round 5 will begin with Mr. Minor. Do you support the Downtown Academic Hub project? And if not, what would be your plan to address high school capacity in the next decade?
I enthusiastically support the Downtown Academic Hub project. I have written about this. I've talked about this throughout our campaign. This is an extraordinarily great project for this community. The boutique model we've found great success. And this current board, is working in partnership with the city and the county to provide funding. The idea behind the Academic Hub is to provide increased vocational trades. It's going to spur economic growth, I believe, in the downtown, and I certainly hope the city will provide the funding and we can figure out a funding plan. I think that this is a fantastic opportunity for our students, and moreover, our downtown, Hagerstown, we talk about revitalization. This is the definition of revitalization, and that's an investment in education. Thank you.
Mr. Perini.
I do support the Downtown Academic Hub. In general, I'll say I support it because I'm a big supporter of revitalizing downtown Hagerstown. I think it's incredibly important for the Board of Education plays an incredibly important role in our community as a whole. And Hagerstown, as our county seat, well, the way I would put it is, as goes Hagerstown, so goes Washington County. The Academic Hub program, as has been outlined publicly so far, so to the extent that I'm familiar with it, is to provide boutique high school programs, diverse programs, that gives the students more opportunities. And the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts is an example of that. And that in itself will delay the need for building a new high school here in Washington County, which can cost $80 to $100 million. So I think it's a great investment, and I think I would very much be very much in support of it. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
This situation is not just a win-win, but a win-win-win for the city, the county, and the school board. As it is now, we have been running academic space for the School for the Arts, primarily in the University of Maryland building, but we are losing our space over there as their program is growing, and it's great that their program is growing. So we've had to look for other space. A hub would provide the space for the academic classes, as well as increased space for the specialty classes of Barbara Ingram. But that building will be large enough that it will also be able to supply the academic space for things like the Fire and Rescue Academy, which we will be moving into the Frederick Street facility, hopefully before the end of the school year. It is a win for the city. It's going to bring more traffic downtown, more attention downtown. It's a win for the county and the school system because we can put off or delay even longer having to spend $60 to $80 million on a new high school.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Going to round 6. We'll begin this round with Mr. Perini. The 2014 election campaign has been one of the most confrontational and personal campaigns in recent Washington County history. Unfortunately, many accusations and suggestions have been of a personal and suggestive nature. Will you go on record tonight and say that if elected, you promise the voters and citizens of our county that you will be open with all decisions, except for personnel matters, that you make as an elected member of the Washington County Board of Education?
Absolutely. I think that's a core function of an effective board member an effective Board of Education. You know, it is unfortunate that that the Board of Education race has, you know, had situations where I'll say questions of character have come up. I've tried to stay out of that fray, if you will, but you know, there are folks that are on the board and running for re-election or want to be on the board that, quite frankly, maybe just shouldn't be running. You know, I talked a little bit in my opening statement about fiscal discipline and responsibility, and you know, I think if someone's asked to be, and I'll mention this later as well, if someone is asked to be in charge of a $300 million budget, they should certainly be able to keep their own house in order, so to speak. So it's unfortunate that that's occurred, but I absolutely will make sure that any discussions that I have will be transparent.
Ms. Fisher?
Absolutely. No secret meetings. No discussion of personnel matters outside of official board closed sessions. It's just not, it's not right for the public. We must be transparent. I think this board has been transparent with its accomplishments, with its endeavors. I do believe that we need to look at the integrity of the people running, not just financially, but in every aspect of what you term integrity. But I would be transparent with all my decisions.
Mr. Minor?
Yeah, this campaign has been tough. There's no doubt about it. I've taken a few black eyes, some knocks on the chin, but you know, let's cut to the chase. The transparency. We want open government, and if I'm elected, I'm going to give you open government. I'm not going to do any of the secret meetings or any of that. But you know, the tone of this campaign sometimes has fallen adrift. But you know, our responsibility as candidates is to turn that conversation back to the students. What's best for our students? How can we improve our school system? And you know, in the next few weeks of the final weeks of this campaign, I'm going to do just that. So, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go on to round 7, and this will be our last round before another break. And we'll start with Ms. Fisher. As a board member, will you visit schools to see for yourself what is going on in the classrooms throughout the county? If not, what strategies will you use to make informed decisions that will impact employees and children?
Well, besides personal observation of classrooms and schools, we do receive a tremendous amount of data and reports from our staff to help us make decisions about what programs are working, what textbooks and so on are advisable to purchase, what do we need as far as technology and so on. In addition to that, I'm currently serving, one of the committees I serve on is the curriculum committee. The curriculum committee presents programs to us. Usually they are the newest programs that are being piloted somewhere in the school system, and we have a chance to observe and ask questions about those courses. They often bring teachers in for us to talk to who have actually been piloting those programs, so we can get a better idea of what the programs are like.
Mr. Minor?
Yes, I've been very fortunate to travel from all the way up the Cascade to all the way up to the other end of the mountain at Hancock. And the role of a board member is we have to be out involved, and we have to know what's going on in the schools. And I think technology is a great advantage that we have to communicate with our principals. And it's important that we talk with our teachers. It's important that we understand what's happening at the ground level. It's important that we communicate with our superintendent and the school support staff, as well as the administrative staff here at the board. I've made a point to visit all aspects or all portions of this community. I've been having coffee chats every Saturday morning, and I'm having one this week at Smithsburg, and I invite you all to come. I think it's important that we have to get out and about, see what's going on in the community, and to stay abreast of all the important issues in each of our schools. Thanks.
Mr. Perini?
I absolutely believe that a good board member is one who visits the schools, knows what's going on, but also understands the difference between micromanaging and being involved as a Board of Education member. And there's a difference between knowing what's going on and trying to interfere with what's going on. There is a well-defined structure in the administration of the Washington County Public Schools, and that needs to be respected. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier when I talked about teamwork and the board working well together. I think it's incredibly important that as in the last question about the decisions being made in transparency, but also that there be good communication between the board and the administration, and that the board doesn't try to do the administration's job.
Okay. Thank you, candidates. We'll take another short break at this time. Okay, welcome back. We'll now move on to round 8, and we will begin this round with Mr. Minor. Transparency has been a key word for many candidates. We've heard it a lot from the candidates here already tonight. What will you do to guarantee transparency?
Well, again, we've belabored the word transparency. We've talked about it. That is a word that just keeps popping up, and everybody has a different definition for it. We'd want open government. I'm a citizen. I'm a voting citizen. You're a voting citizen, and we want our elected officials to be straight with us. I'm not going to take a shot at any of my opponents, but there's certain things that I think that I wouldn't do, and I'm going to be open with the public. I've tried my very, very best to meet any citizen who's contacted me their needs, to discuss openly about the issues, about me personally. And if I'm a board member, if I'm blessed to be elected to this board, each and every day I'm going to be working on behalf of you folks and our students, and they deserve honesty, and they deserve us to be the best board members we can be. Thank you.
Mr. Perini?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's safe to say that, you just follow the ethics policy. You don't have to worry about being transparent because that's the way it's supposed to be. I think, board members just use common sense and don't do things like have discussions about personnel matters, over the lunch table at a restaurant. I just, things like that blow my mind are things that, obviously I would never do. And I spoke to this board in public comment a few weeks ago about constituent communication. And I talked about what I would do. I certainly believe that it's important to have an open door policy, to have good communications with those folks who have any involvement with the public schools, whether they're parents or their teachers or anybody else. And I think that, I think we need to make sure that that's the way that this board works. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
I think one of the key factors in transparency is something that this board does and the city of Hagerstown does, and that is to broadcast their business meetings. In addition to that, we have a website through which we attempt to keep our constituents aware of what's happening, what's going on. We are in the process of updating that website and making it more user-friendly, I think, which is a good thing. We have to be willing to listen to our parents, our teachers, even our students, carefully as to what their problems and concerns are. And then our job is to share any of those concerns back to the proper staff who can do something with them. We're not the problem solvers, the staff is, but we can certainly connect the people to the right person to help them with any issues they may have.
On to round 9, and we'll begin this round with Mr. Perini. Under what circumstances would you ask the county commissioners for funding above maintenance of effort? Should the board consider the county's fiscal condition in making that determination, or should the board simply ask for what it believes it needs and let the commissioners make a decision?
Well, that's an interesting question because it goes back to a couple of questions ago about the good working relationship between the Board of Education and the county commissioners. I do believe that it is a board's responsibility to create a budget for what it needs. At the same time, I think it's also prudent for elected officials at all levels to understand what the constraints are. For example, it's important for the elected Board of Education to understand and work with the county commissioners on what their constraints are. Having said that, maintenance of effort being a legal term written into Maryland law that basically says that a jurisdiction, in our case Washington County, must provide the same or more level of funding than previous years. I would say that I would encourage the county commissioners to look at every opportunity to enhance funding for Washington County Public Schools where necessary. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Again, yes, we do have a good relationship, and we don't want to strain that relationship. We do need to continue to work together. But there have been several items that have been shifted to the board. For instance, the health providers in our schools, we had to pick up the cost of those from our general fund. Also, of course, the pensions have been shifted, obviously originating from the state, not from the county commissioners. And those things do tax and make it difficult, a little more difficult to work with the budget. I think that it all boils down to honesty. If we feel a real concern, a real need for additional funds, if it's really necessary, if we can't work out the budget, then we go sit down with those county commissioners. We just have to be honest and forthright with them and see if there is some way we can work out the problem to somehow get additional funds if there is a true need for those additional funds.
Mr. Minor?
We definitely have to work together with our county commissioners as a team. This is a major portion of their responsibility to ensure that we're receiving our funding. But with that said, I think that we have to work towards a fiscally responsible budget. And this board, the current board, has done a great job of ensuring that we do meet our fiscal needs. As far as asking for more money and maintenance of effort, no, I can't support that.
Going to round 10, and we'll begin this round with Ms. Fisher. With the increase in diagnosis of developmental and cognitive delays, how will Washington County meet the demands of students who require more resources and aids?
We have been facing that, especially with the growth of autism in our schools. And we have we are fortunate in having a very strong supervisor in the special eds area, Mr. Jeff Gladhill. We have had to hire more paraprofessionals to help deal with students with behavioral and other types of problems. It seems to be working. I know a lot of students now are being handled one-on-one, but it can grow to be a very great burden because it does take that one-on-one in many cases. I think we're going to have to look to the state and federal government if things continue to worsen as far as the numbers of those kinds of students.
Mr. Minor.
I'd like to return back to my original opening statement that we have to work to meet nearly 24,000 different unique individuals in this school system. And I think this board, and I think our support staff, especially Mr. Gladhill, has worked extraordinarily well to work with students with special needs. I think that we have an IEP program in place, but I think that we could use improvement because I've talked with many parents throughout the county. I've knocked on a lot of doors and we hear a lot of things. And one of the main priorities is to how do we meet our individual IEP plan and how do we strengthen that? I think grants can help. And I think that in the next 4 years, that is something that a new board can certainly look into and continue to streamline and approach with some new ideas.
Mr. Perini?
Yeah, the demands of students with special needs continue to grow. I personally like to use best practices and going out and finding, instead of trying to recreate the wheel, finding those school systems that have tackled these kind of issues and see what works best. I think that there are some bright spots in Washington County Public Schools in providing the services that are needed. But I will tell you that I talked with one parent. I'm not going to mention any names or even the schools, but went from one middle school where the program was not being followed and the child suffered, transferred to another program to another school, and it was like night and day. So I was happy to help, make her an introduction to the people here at the Washington County Public Schools to maybe help with her situation. But I think if we find those best practices and implement them, that's how we need to go.
Thank you. Going to question 11, and we'll begin this round with Mr. Minor. What criteria would you use to determine whether an issue should be addressed in policy, regulation, or in an administrative guideline?
Well, our superintendent is in charge of the day-to-day operations. The board is in charge of setting policy, and we are in charge of working on behalf of all the taxpayers to ensure a fiscally responsible budget. But I want to make the point that we should not be involved, board members should never get involved with Dr. Wilcox's job. That's not our job. We don't tell him that a school needs to be closed on a snow day. We don't get involved with parking disputes. That's not our role. So we have a very clear, defined role. You can find that on Washington County Public Schools website. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will have a great understanding of my role and responsibilities to this board and to our students. Thank you.
Mr. Perini?
I think it just comes down to understanding the difference between a policy and a regulation and a guideline. The policy is to say what is to happen. The regulation is to say how that's going to happen. I think it comes back to, again, common sense and not wanting to interfere with the operation of the administration, not wanting to micromanage the administration. I think it's just using common sense. So, thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Policy does come from the board level. It is the what we want to happen in the schools. It's our overall governance performance level. Regulations do get into the details of how things are to be done. Primarily, Dr. Wilcox and our staff write the regulations. And one of the reasons we have regulations is that regulations can be changed more quickly than policy. There is a rather lengthy procedure for changing a policy. And there are certain things that have to change sometimes from school year to school year, often based on changes that occur at the state legislature. Administrative guidelines are those day-to-day operations that are solely under the control of the superintendent, and that's the area that some board members occasionally get into trouble with when they try to take over that role.
Okay, thank you. We are just about out of time, so at this time I'd like to invite each of the candidates to give their 2-minute closing statements. And we'll go with the closing statements in reverse order as we began. So we'll begin the closing statements with Mr. Perini.
First, I'd like to thank the Herald Mail for making this forum possible. I've made this statement before, but I think it's worth repeating here tonight. One of the fundamental responsibilities of the Board of Education is to establish and manage the Washington County Public Schools budget. I think it may come as a surprise to most citizens that the combined budget is over $300 million per year. This is an incredible responsibility. And while staff assembles the numbers, it is the board who are responsible for the budget. It is the board, for example, who must promote enhancing maintenance of effort to provide for increasing teacher and support personnel wages. I'm familiar with the issue of managing budgets because I was previously the CEO of a large company which had $80 million per year in revenues and approximately 1,000 employees. I understand large and complex budgets. I understand that while none of us like to pay taxes, the business had to follow the rules and pay its taxes in full and on time. The debt service on loans was always paid on time, every time. And I know what it means to make payroll every week. For those who have not run a business, let me put this in more familiar terms. Being fiscally responsible for a budget is like managing your household expenses. It is important to budget your money, to set aside money to pay the bills, to buy groceries, to pay your mortgage. I have never missed a mortgage payment. I have never missed a payroll. I have always paid payroll taxes on time, every time. It is incredibly important that every taxpayer dollar be spent wisely and conservatively. And it's important that we have people on the Board of Education who can understand and control a budget and be fiscally responsible. It is important because that is how we ensure that we have the best possible schools and instruction for our children, how we afford to pay teachers what they deserve, how we ensure the sustainability of our school system for the next generation of students. So I respectfully ask that you please vote for Peter Perini for Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Going to Mr. Minor.
I'd like to tell you a story. When we first began our campaign, I was up in Hancock, and we were waving a sign. We were standing in the bitter cold, and a mom stopped on the side of the road and said, "What the heck are you guys doing out here?" And she invited us into her home. She said she has two kids with special needs. The mom looked at me. There was tears streaming down her face, and she said, I don't know what we're going to do. My students are struggling, both of them. But without Washington County Public Schools, I don't know where they would be. And I looked her in the eye and I said, I'm not a perfect candidate and I'm not a perfect person, but I can promise you that if you elect me to this board, if you vote for me, and if you give me an opportunity to serve you, I'm going to do everything in my power to help you, to help your students. Folks, this race is about kids. This race is about the responsibility of board members to foster their futures. This race is about how to provide our Washington County students, every unique personality, 24,000 students with a unique opportunity at a personable and equitable education. This race is about ideas and vision, and it's about who could work together as a team and work on behalf of each and every student. I support our teachers. I believe that teaching is the most important profession in this country, and we have an obligation to make sure that our teachers are getting every resource that they have. My experience in budgets will lend a valuable asset to this board, and that I will be a fiscally responsible steward. I believe in local control of education. I believe that our education decisions are best administered right here in Washington County, not by a government bureaucrat. And finally, I believe that we owe it to our kids that we have a common sense curriculum, that we get them ready for school. The total summation of what we do as a board member is graduation. My name is Ryan Miner. I'm a candidate for this school board, and I hope you take a leap of faith with my candidacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
First of all, thank you to the Herald Mail for sponsoring this forum. As a candidate for re-election, I won't make promises, as some others have, that can't be delivered. At the very least, it takes a vote of 4 members to pass any motion. And besides, some promises, like eliminating portable classrooms or stopping the Common Core, just aren't realistic. What I can promise is that I would work diligently. I would come to meetings prepared. I would listen to parents and teachers and share their concerns with the rest of my fellow board members and with the appropriate staff. And I would promise to work to reach compromise when board members are divided on issues. And there are several current issues about which I have particular concerns. I can't promise to wave a magic wand and fix them, but I promise to research solutions and to promote those which I feel will help correct problems. Those issues about which I have the greatest concerns include things like bullying, establishing that academic hub that we talked about a while ago, providing mentors and appropriate professional development for teachers and administrators, promoting student growth rather than student proficiency as a teacher evaluation criteria, and perhaps more importantly, raising the percentage of students who are literate by the end of 3rd grade. I believe I possess the knowledge, skills, available time to help guide the school system. I consider myself to be detail-oriented, physically conservative, experienced, and passionate about education. I believe that children are our future and that education matters. That's why I always put our students first. Thank you, and please vote on November 4th.
Thank you to all 3 of our candidates. Please give them a round of applause. That brings us to the end of the forum. We extend our gratitude once again to Washington County Public Schools for hosting this event, and I'd like to thank you all for attending. Have a good evening.
Good job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. I did not, my brother, who's a lawyer, wanted me to go to law school. Come